Welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast, where we're all about sharing the forbidden secrets and slightly embellished truths about corporate cybersecurity programs. We're ranting, we're raving, and we're telling you the stuff that nobody talks about on their fancy website and trade show giveaways, all to protect you from cyber criminals. And now, here's your hosts, Mike Rotondo, Zach Fuller, and Lauro Chavez.
Hello, and welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast. This is your co-host, Zach Fuller, joined by Mike Rotondo and Lauro Chavez. Today, we are talking about cyber risk assessments, everything you never thought you wanted to know about cyber risk assessments. But it's an important topic because everybody needs to understand how they're exposed at the highest level across an organization. So before we do that, Mike, we want to kick us off with the news?
Yeah, we got some interesting headlines for us today. I'm not going to start out with Microsoft. I'm going to save that for the end. But anyway, cybercrime costs organizations nearly $1.79 million per minute. Cybercrime costs organizations an incredible $1.79 million every minute, according to RiskIQ. The study analyzed the volume of malicious activity on the internet, exposed the scale and damage of cyber attacks in the past year, finding that 648 cyber threats occurred every minute. Researchers calculated that the average cost of a breach is $7.2 per minute, while the overall predicted cybersecurity spend is $280,000 every minute. While the e-commerce industry saw a record $861.1 billion in sales, it lost $38,052 in online payment fraud every minute. Healthcare lost $13 per minute on digital security breaches in the past year. Court also looked at the impact of different forms of cybercrime that showed that per minute there was $3,615 lost to cryptocurrency scams and 525,000 records compromised and 6 organizations victimized by ransomware. And that is per minute. The question continues to come out, ransomware to pay or not to pay, legal or illegal. These are the questions. So there's no guarantee that a decryptor will be forthcoming if you do pay the ransom. That's one thing that we all need to understand. Basically, on a recent survey by Cybereason, they found that almost half of the businesses that paid ransoms didn't regain access to all their critical data after receiving their encryption. Why are people paying then? Well, there's one problem. A whole new industry segment of ransomware negotiators and cyber insurance emerged on the other. A new business segment has been born. Companies and individuals began profiting from facilitating the payment of extortion demands. Whether it's legal or not, in October 2020, the United States Department of Treasury Office of Foreign Asset Control, or OFAC, declared it illegal to pay a ransomware demand in some instances, which are still vague. However, aside from OFAC's ruling in the United States, there's still no clear guidance on paying ransom demands. And according to experts, it may actually be tax deductible. So, we got that going for us. So it comes down to an ethical business reason, basically, and there's no guarantee you're getting your data back. We all heard about Kaseya, right? So I'm just going to run through some big headlines on Kaseya. Basically, REvil ransomware asked $70 million to decrypt all Kaseya attack victims. Kaseya hacked via authentication bypass. It's actually a really good read. CISA has come out with FBI guidance on dealing with MSPs and their customers impacted in the Kaseya attack. On the bad news side, fake Kaseya VSA security update backdoor networks with Cobalt Strike. So what's basically happened is there's a fake fix out there. Agent REvil unveiled in Kaseya VSA ransomware attack. So they confirmed it's REvil. And lastly, researchers uncovered the network infrastructure of REvil, the notorious ransomware group that hit Kaseya. That's, I guess, the good news. They've been able to track everything back to a cloud provider in Eastern Europe. So some little news: QNAP fixes critical bug in NAS backup disaster recovery app. Check that one out. And Microsoft in the news again. 3 fixes, or actually 3 problems. They had a new print nightmare flaw. They released there's a new CVE that was identified. They then pushed an emergency patch, and then experts were able to bypass the emergency patch. So good luck with printing with Microsoft. With that, I turn to Lauro and the exploits.
Since you saved Microsoft, the offensive child, for last, I'll go ahead and just lead with what I have today, which is WordPress again this week. So lots of WordPress plugins this month. So if you're leveraging WordPress, please be careful with the plugins you're using. We've got 3 this week. The Project and Document Manager has a remote code execution. Bad news for this. So if you're running that Project and Document Manager plugin, make sure that you're updating that beyond 4.2. The other one is Plain View Activity Monitor. If you're running that WordPress plugin for monitoring activities, there's a remote code execution. for that as well. So make sure that you've updated that beyond 2.0. And last but not least, if you're running the WordPress plugin, anti-malware security, and brute force firewall, you are subject to directory traversal. So again, if you're playing with WordPress and you like being in that danger zone, make sure you're updating your plugins, because that anti-malware security brute force firewall up to 4.20 is vulnerable to that directory traversal. And that is all I have this week. Turn it back over to you, Zach.
With all we talk about with Microsoft or WordPress, they ought to be sponsoring the podcast.
That's what I was thinking. I wouldn't want, it'd just be like a dirty, like getting sponsored by like a dirty cesspool of stuff.
Terrible. We don't want to associate ourselves with that stuff, but yeah, I guess everybody has problems. Just some have a lot more than others. So if you're on WordPress, just get off.
Yeah, it's like if you think
Option.
it's just bad for you, if you think you've got it bad, just be glad you're not Microsoft or WordPress right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had WordPress like web developers tell me that, web development marketing companies tell me that, oh, it's the best thing ever. No, there's never any problems with it. It's, it's great. It's secure. I've never heard anybody's WordPress site going down. But anyway, let's transition. And we're kind of beating a dead horse at this point, right?
Want even more Cyber Rants? Be sure to subscribe to the Cyber Rants podcast. Get your copy of our best-selling book, Cyber Rants, on Amazon today. This podcast is brought to you by Silent Sector, the firm dedicated to building world-class cybersecurity programs for mid-market and emerging companies across the U.S. Silent Sector also provides industry-leading penetration tests and cyber risk assessments. Visit silentsector.com and contact us today.
Cyber risk assessments and what you need to know about. And that's what today is all about. We want to take you through a bit of a process for all the millions of listeners, as we established, I think on our previous episode. I want to just make sure that everybody is clear on what a cyber risk assessment is, what's involved in the process, and how to look at it. Cyber risk assessment, we're going to differentiate this for today's purposes. We did a series on penetration testing previously. We're talking about cyber risk assessment in the form of what we would call a framework risk assessment, following an industry recognized set of best practices and following more of a paper analysis through reviews of documentation, through interviews, that sort of thing. So that's the lens in which we're looking through today. And I say that because it's all over the board with what the industry calls these different types of assessments, right? So starting out, and Mike and Laura, I'd love to hear your take on this, but you really have to look at it in a couple different ways, right? The big question is, why are we doing this? Are we doing this because some client is telling us we have to? Are we doing it for a certain compliance requirement, say NIST 800-171 or CMMC for the Department of Defense? Or do we really want to know internally where our strengths and weaknesses across our whole cybersecurity, cyber risk management program? And so I would say it's generally split. We get a lot of requests for risk assessments because they're being required by somebody, by a client or prospect of one of our clients. And then we also have a lot of companies they truly are being proactive, and they're doing it because they're getting in a best practice of doing this at least annually. Let's talk about picking a framework, right? And I don't know what you guys think, but we get a lot of these companies that will come to us and they say, hey, we had this risk assessment done, a cyber risk assessment, and the company that did it, they had their own framework. They had their own way of doing it. It wasn't any industry standard, and that always makes me cringe. I think you should really be following a NIST CSF or CIS controls or NIST 853 or some formal standard that's recognized across the industry, that's put together by a governing body of very smart people. What do you guys think?
Yeah, you shouldn't be using Bayou Bojack's security framework.
Yeah, I was gonna say the want to get paid framework.
Make it up as we go.
Yeah.
What do you think about So for the companies that they're coming to you, what would be your considerations if they're saying, well, we've never done this before. What framework should we choose for our first risk assessment? Call it maybe it's a mid-market company between, let's say, somewhere between 100 and 1,000 employees.
Well, I mean, my general go-to is either NIST CSF or CIS. So those are the two that make the most sense to me, because you can then step them into other frameworks. You can go from this CSF to 171 alpha to 853, or CIS is pretty much sufficient in itself. It just doesn't have the name recognition for some reason as NIST does, probably because of the federal government attachment to NIST.
Yeah, no, great point. And that's the other thing, is it kind of ask them, is it what type of clients do you have? What type of customers do you have? Do you do business with, the industries that would better recognize NIST as a governing framework, or are you in, kind of a technology B2B industry where, CIS would, not only be applicable, but probably be more known about than in the government wings.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The thing I like also about those is the way the data rolls up between, especially NIST CSF, with your 5 major control categories. I think they do a nice job of laying that out, and then CIS does as well. CIS, the latest version, 8.1, as of right now, they really put a lot more emphasis on your remote workforce. So, they took all the lessons learned and things that companies were struggling with, when COVID hit, and put that into the new CIS framework. So I think that's beneficial as well. Another thing to note there too is that, some of these are going to be more palatable for mid-market and emerging type companies, whereas a more sophisticated organization with, say, an in-house security department, or at least a fairly robust IT department, something like NIST 853 would be more achievable for them, but that's a lot to bite off for a smaller organization. By the way, NIST is National Institute of Standards and Technology, and CSF is a cybersecurity framework. So you can Google that, you can download the spreadsheets online, and you can see exactly what we're talking about. CIS is Center for Internet Security, and then controls. You can download from their website as well the framework in the form of an Excel spreadsheet. And what you'll see is that it's really just a big list of things that you should have in place to be considered proactive in your security program. So for those people brand new to this stuff, wanted to give an overview here. So let's talk about scope a little bit. So once we've picked a framework to run with, right? And by the way, we're talking about a cyber risk assessment in the term of a non-compliance related audit, right? So we're not talking about it for PCI or a SOC 2 audit. That's a different topic altogether, with different auditors and all that. So we'll save that for another day. We're talking about the things that you could even do yourself, or bring a third party in for a third party attestation of alignment. So let's talk about scope. What should an organization do? I mean, other than doing the risk assessment across the entire company, when would you suggest they think about narrowing the focus versus just doing it company wide?
Well, I'm always a proponent of doing it company wide. So, I mean, you can narrow the scope if you're doing like a business unit or a subsidiary, but other than that, I mean, with some of the small companies, you just might as well do the whole thing. Is my belief. So.
I agree. I think we talked about this before too, Mike, that it's okay to probably scope things out initially so that you're not overwhelmed with work.
Yeah.
But you need to. I mean, it's ridiculous as an example. I think so. Whether you go with NIST or CIS, they're going to require you to do continuous vulnerability scanning as an example, right? We'll put one of the controls out. So if you narrow the scope to just this one business unit, and you're trying to implement these control sets there, and these programmatic continuous operationalized items that you're doing, like vulnerability scanning, it's ridiculous just to implement vulnerability scanning just for one business unit, right? Just to say that one business unit is compliant. But all of your other business units now, they have no vulnerability scanning of any kind. You're not doing the same sort of threat awareness or program management for the other sites. So it overall, you need, like Mike said, you need to work towards a holistic approach with a framework alignment. It's okay to start small and not boil the entire ocean at one time, but you need to have that holistic goal in mind. Otherwise, you'll find yourself in a place where you have very few places that are secured and running operationalized cybersecurity programs that are aligned to frameworks, and the rest of your business and places will suffer.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And the other thing is that, you got to focus on that framework. You got to focus on getting it done, because a 50% complete framework is just as useless as a 0% framework, because it all works together.
Yeah, and these frameworks are going to give you programmatic tactics in both documents and process and in the technologies that you may need to either modify or implement this defense in depth strategy, right? So everything that the framework's going to tell you to do is a good thing to do in a mature cybersecurity program. It's going to help reduce that risk for the organization. And so that's why it's important you do the whole thing.
Excellent point. Another thing I'll touch on is rather than the ad hoc approach of make up cybersecurity as you go, if a breach occurs and you find yourself in court and the opposing counsel is asking, well, what was your cybersecurity program based on? And you say, oh, well, we have some, smart techie people that are doing some cybersecurity stuff for us. It's like, well, no, that's going to be considered negligence, right? Versus if you're able to say, hey, well, we follow the NIST CSF framework. We're 80% aligned. This is where we are on our plan of action and milestones. They're going to say, okay, wow, this company has their ducks in a row. They're not negligent. They're actually making a valid effort day in and day out to align to industry recognized standards. That's going to hold up a lot better than saying, well, we made it up as we went. So
we aligned, Your Honor. We aligned to Bayou Bojack security standard, and down here that's just fine for us. You know what I mean?
We're gonna patent that. We're gonna create that, or trademark it, I should say. Make it our own, right?
Well, the other thing that we're seeing too is that with the growth of the cybersecurity insurance piece, as I kind of alluded to in that one article, is that insurance renewals are up 40% now because of all the hacks. My assumption is they're going to start asking you to prove that you have some kind of compliance in place in order to be insured. They've been moving to this for a while, and I think this will finally take root, because these companies are going to start seeing they're losing tons of money because these people aren't doing their job.
I think they're going to treat it like health insurance, right? With this pre-qualified conditions, or you know what I mean? Like if you've got certain things wrong with your business, they're going to say, no, thanks. We're not going to insure you too high risk.
Right.
Yeah. And they do have the self attestations, right? That's what we see most commonly is their questionnaires are getting more and more robust. But I think it's going to be requiring either one of their own auditors to come in, even for mid-market and emerging companies, or a third party like us basically giving a report and an attestation letter showing the extent of alignment. So I think you're right. And I also think cyber insurance is going to get a lot more expensive. $1.79 million every minute from your article, Mike. That's crazy. That's just crazy.
It's unbelievable. It's staggering.
It shows where, we are losing as a nation, as a world, we are losing the fight against cybercrime, and we're only making the criminals more powerful. So anyway, I won't go down.
Losing. We haven't lost yet. There's still a chance.
We're not, there needs to be a lot more done. And a lot of good thing, a lot of smart people are working to figure it out, but we gotta look at ourselves and say, hey, there's a lot we don't know. There's a long way to go here, but
it all starts with a framework.
Yeah. I want to go back to the self-attestation piece real quick. The last thing you want to do is ever lie on a self-attestation or state you've got something that you're implementing that you truly aren't, because that will blow up in your face with an insurance claim and in court really fast.
Fraud. It's fraud.
Yeah.
It's fraud if you try to use that as a method to receive a policy amount, right, that would be due to you. through the insurance company.
Yeah, and that's the difference, I think, between a civil fine and to quote the movie Office Space, federal pound me in the rear end prison time.
I don't know if that's a direct quote, but
I clarified it for our under 18 audience.
Hello, Peter. What's happening?
Somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
What the hell is PC load letter?
Yeah. We need to do an episode on Office Space one of these days here. But
how it correlates to reality, yeah. I know I don't let Zach find me at Friday afternoon.
Hello, Mike. What's happening? Well, hey, after we get organization goes in, they choose a framework. They say, okay, well, excellent, makes sense. We're going to do this enterprise cyber risk assessment across the entire organization. Let's talk about what to expect in terms of that process. What do they need for resources on there, and what is their involvement versus ours, or and assessors, I should say. And then what do they need, to think about in terms of just readiness and time requirements and such?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So it's a pretty seamless process, right? I mean, I think the first engagement pieces are going to be interview based. So you want to have key individuals that are going to be there to be able to answer questions about infrastructure, process, that sort of thing that's going to happen. Any assessor is going to look, and I think to prepare yourself, an assessor is going to look in three places to determine or ascertain whether or not you have a control state in place. So vulnerability scanning, for example, right? We talked about that earlier. So if I'm trying to determine through the requirement if you've got vulnerability scanning in place, I'm going to interview, I'm going to ask you, right, what you're doing. I'm going to talk a little bit maybe to your IT team about what technologies they're using to do this, how often they're doing it. And then I'm also going to look at your documentation. So there's always those three places. We're going to interview the human, we're going to review the technologies, and then we're going to review the documentation and make sure that all three places hold reasonable belief, right? Reasonable language and reasonable process that you've got that control in place. Is that too much, Zach?
Did you forgot about the new cover sheets on the TPS reports?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great point. The three, it's a triple whammy. It's people, your documented processes, and then the technical review, right? For the various controls. So that's important for people to understand that they need to have those things in place. And it goes back to our previous rants about documentation, and you document what you do, right? And do what you document.
We love reading it.
Yeah, especially Mike loves reading documentation. So he only probably reads about 7,000 pages a week.
I hear that Mike's gotten real good. So. I heard that, Mike, you got real good at reading documentation through teary eyes, through crying eyes. I know I have.
Well, yeah. So good point so basically series of interviews, set up meetings at the frequency that your organization can allocate the appropriate people, right? And so most of them will require your technical resources, heads of IT and such. For certain scenarios, they may need to get information from leadership or access to other data or documents or whatever. But for the most part, I think we can usually work with the lead, technical individuals within the organization that kind of know where everything is.
Yeah, if they can answer the questions. And the other thing, Zach, just to jump in here, plan for somewhere between 4 and 8 hours to go through the interview process for a framework assessment, right? Depending on how complicated the organization is.
Yep. And if you want to make it all on once or on a Saturday, Mike, I know you love that too. So
yeah, it's my favorite thing. Yeah.
But yeah, break it up over a few weeks.
One thing to bring back too is during these assessments, I think there's a lot of people that bundle up a lot of fear, and they're like, "Oh my God, I don't want to know how bad we are." In reality, a lot of the companies we find when we go through them, they're between 60 and 70% compliant just by doing what you do.
Oh yeah, that's true. They are. They really are. They've got a lot more going for them than they think they do.
Yeah.
The biggest thing they're usually always missing is documentation.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
I would concur. Yeah. And the other thing that I see is that a lot of times you get 6 months into these projects and we tell them it's going to take 18 to 24 months, and people were like, well, why aren't we got more done? It's because you guys aren't doing the work. So you have to be committed to doing the work, and that's it. There's only so much a consulting company can do, because some of this internal processing has to come from you. We can't do it all.
They can't. Yeah, and anybody that tells you they can build your security program in a bubble and you don't need to be involved, you're not getting you're not securing your organization, just flat out. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that
Jack
way.
Security.
we could, a company like ours could take a lot of the heavy lifting off, provide a lot of the guidance, right? Shorten the timeline tremendously and do it right the first time, but you have to be involved, right? Just the fact of the business. But well, I feel better now knowing that most companies are 60 to 70% aligned. A little good warm and fuzzy there. So now when we go through the process, interviews, looking at documentation, technical reviews, all that stuff is done. We go back and put a full, very robust report together, many pages long. And so excellent reading material. Our reports are the best, we're told.
Yes.
So at least the first section that most people read is should be captivating. You should enjoy it, and you probably want to share it with the other interested parties in your organization. Keep it internal. But once you have that, you understand where the gaps are. So let's talk about prioritizing and remediating. What do you do after you have this risk assessment that says you're 65% in alignment with NIST CSF? What do you do from there?
After you drink a bottle of scotch and cry yourself to death at your desk.
Yeah.
Then you gain some composure, and you either ask us for the roadmap, right, for a roadmap or prioritization, or you try to prioritize what you've done on your own. And what I like to tell organizations is that, like Mike was stating earlier, a lot of organizations have things that are really close. So take care of the short wins first, right? Things that, like, you've got, maybe you've got a company handbook and you need to add some language to empower the acceptable use policy within it, right? Or maybe you just need to create a separate acceptable use policy. Just get it done and knock it out. It doesn't need to be fancy. There's no right or wrong way to write documentation. Okay, what's important is it comes on company letterhead. It's approved language for the organization. Okay, that's the simplest way that I can put it. As long as that your leadership approves the language, legal has approved the language, and you can send it out to your humans to read it, that's good. That's all we care about, right? That's all any assessor should care about. They shouldn't nitpick your language. It needs to be impactful and forceful. But take care of those quick wins first. And then there's going to be some items that come out of this that may require you to make major configuration changes or even purchase technologies and implement those technologies.
Yeah, the best thing about having a roadmap, right? Whether you get professionals to come in and build that plan out for you, or you do it yourself, having that roadmap and that clear plan of action and milestones forward, that's going to make a tremendous amount of difference, because now the whole organization, leadership, everybody sees on paper where they're headed, usually over the next 12 to 24 months, what needs to be done, what needs to be in place. So it becomes a very measurable process, right? So it's no longer kind of a fly by night approach, make it up as you go. Now you have the plan, everybody's signed off on it. And then you understand from there also what type of resources you need to allocate in order to get in alignment and really move forward. Now, I will say that it's rare that any company is going to have 100% of the controls in place ever, right? There are going to be justifications around them, reasons why, compensating controls, wherever it might be. But the important thing is that you are striving to attain alignment with a recognized framework, and that roadmap will help get you there.
Yeah, it will. And I think that you have those accountabilities too, because there's going to be line items in that roadmap that, you as the leader may not be accomplishing, right? It may be, individuals in your IT teams, and you'll want to have those, but being able to look at that plan and say, these are the 15 or 20 things I need to check off in order to get compliant will help not only drive that process, but also give you that, that 30,000 foot view of clarity and say, we're almost done here. Right. But of course, I think that's the other point to make, Zach, is that once we get on this road, right, and we've done the interviews and you've gotten the roadmap and you're working towards implementing these things, you have to realize that I've been telling clients this, that these are forever machines, right? You don't go down a CIS 8.1 control framework one time. When you become compliant, you're putting these programs and processes in place. They are forever machines. They're going to last and become a integral part of the business from the point until the business is no more.
Yeah,
right?
It should be annually. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent point. I mean, that is your ongoing, your foundation of the security program. So, and then once you have that, also, it becomes, like we've said in previous podcasts, it becomes much easier to cover down on other requirements that might come up. I know you mentioned this earlier, Mike, but any other compliance requirements, or if you need to switch over and map to another framework, again, they're saying 95% of the exact same thing, just laid out in different ways. So it's just a matter of mapping between them. So don't get caught up too early on picking the exact perfect framework, right? There are some excellent ones to start with, and you need to start somewhere. So it's better to do something a little more palatable and then grow, rather than trying to bite off too much. But well, I hope this helped everybody. Hope people that are diving into the cyber risk assessment world for the first time gain some insight here, and reach out if you have any questions, anything like that. But before we go, Mike, Lauro, any final comments, thoughts, rants, Office Space quotes? Anything? Nothing? Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us. Subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. Check out the book on Amazon. We talk a lot about risk assessments. We dive into pen tests, and we dive into all the foundational requirements for a cybersecurity program, all that good stuff. And reach out, cyberrantspodcast.com. There's a little web form there. Let us know what you want us to talk about on future episodes, or reach out on LinkedIn and let us know there. So thanks, everyone.
Yeah, and fill out your TPS reports.
Exactly.
Yes, with the right cover sheet, please. With the right cover sheet. Hawaiian shirt day on Friday. Yes. So
yeah, I'm gonna put this place down.
Well, thanks, everyone.
Shirt on Fridays.
Don't take my stapler, and we'll see you next week.
Pick up your copy of the Cyber Ants book on Amazon today. And if you're looking to take your cybersecurity program to the next level, visit us online at www.silentsector.com. Join us next time for another edition of the Cyber Rants Podcast.